The league, as of right now, are not looking at taxi squads. The a very quiet well, not quiet. We have been kind of quiet on it because we don't want the Olympics to not happen. But COVID is getting rampant with a lot of teams in the AHL. It is messing with a lot of teams. Well, no, we've talked about it, but you know what I mean. It's just the thing of roster management is what we haven't really talked about. The number of e-bugs. St. Louis are getting screwed at every position this year when it comes to trying to call up players. Especially the third goalie thing is such a problem right now. And Jeff Merrick says he's talked to Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly about taxi squads, and there's no plans right now. I don't know if it's something to do with there's going to be some cap shenanigans, but can you not just sort of, I don't know, put in some sort of cushion? I wouldn't know the logistics. I'm not a cap expert, but at this point, if you have a short roster, guys are going to play more, and all of a sudden, the double shifts and that, the risk of injury just shoots up, and everything just gets worse. So I just don't understand what the league are doing here.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what they're doing either, because how many teams have to get screwed before you make like legitimate change? Because first off, the NHL sends a memo and it's like, well, don't have your Christmas parties. So what? Like, again, you're not going to put something that will benefit the teams. Like Boston was not able to call up anybody because Providence was dealing with their own issues with COVID. If they had a taxi squad, that wouldn't have needed to been done. They could have called someone up and here we are. But instead, we're diddle-daddling around the issue. I don't know why we're having an all-star game. Like, you're now restricting the all-star game too. Like, the only reason this should be happening is if you can have fans and it can be full capacity. It makes no sense that you're dying to go to the Olympics, yet you're making decisions that tell me otherwise.
You know what I'm getting the idea from with this?
What's that?
Because you mentioned the AHL trying to be, a full league again, trying to the NHL doing its best. And I think it's just that separation of the leagues and letting the teams play, because the NHL just wants to say things are back to normal and we don't want any more of these other provisions. And like they said, listen, when you use the example of the Christmas party, it said, we're putting all the things that we can to show that there's a sense of normalcy here now. But if something goes wrong, it's on the team. It's not on us.
Sorry. What I don't get is, you talk about the All-Star game, is at this point, you can clearly see the only reason they're still planning to have is the financial part of it. And everyone's worried about the variant right now, the Omicron one. And it just feels like a safety risk to bring everyone. And apparently the restrictions are going to be super tight. But just why risk it at this point? It's the same as argument that I think a lot of us had when the NBA did it last year. I just don't get the risk. And at this point, it's almost like a matter of time until you're like, okay, Olympics were cut down there. And Alex, I heard you mention Providence. How do you just sort of get into that situation? How do you fix that? I just, everything the league have sort of handled everything this year with rosters and that, and so against it, I don't know, it's not a competitive advantage to sort of allow you to have a proper roster in place. It's just needlessly unsafe for players, I think.
I'm so sorry Arizona can't afford to employ 8 more people.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. But they've made decisions like this before, right? They made decisions based on, we've had this discussion, the thing a few years ago with the practice arenas. It was like ridiculous. I just don't see why there's literally no competitive advantage. They're so focused on worrying about whether there's a competitive advantage or not that they're willing to risk this.
And the guys coming in for Boston, that they're going to be league minimum or between 700 to 900,000 cap hits too. Just have a sort of bubble and make those guys just pure exemptions. If it's listen, you don't do that for a normal roster player, but there needs to be some sort of almost like an emergency recall type thing or roster spot. You know what I mean? Something to that effect, I think, is the route that they should take. Anything else on this, guys, you want to touch on? Or
I'm just crossing my fingers that everything goes okay in January, February.
Yep. I think we all are too. Everyone just kind of sits there and we're like, I want the Olympics, but it's just so unrealistic now.